Hi guys, Anastasia here from Anastasia Does Astrology. Thank you for stopping by. Please subscribe to my channel if you haven't yet and leave me a comment. I read them and I would appreciate that quite a lot. So today I'm here to talk about Capricorn Rising. If you don't know your rising sign, there's a calculator, there's a link to go to astro.com and discover it. If you don't know the difference between sun, moon, and rising signs, I also did a video on that. You can find it in the description. And I do chart readings. So if you ever would like more insight on what any of your placements mean, don't hesitate to reach out and book a reading with me. So if you are a Capricorn rising, that makes you a child of Saturn. So you will automatically carry some of the qualities that Saturn comes with. And Saturn is the planet that's the least visible planet. It's far, far away. It corresponds to death a lot of times, but death as far as like the ending and something that we labor through, something that is a limit. So a lot of times Saturn is connected to limitations, to hard work, to dedication, to your duties, responsibilities, things that take time. So if you are a Capricorn rising, you have all of those qualities inborn. Capricorn risings tend to be the most hardworking people out there. They have the strongest work ethic and they're very materially oriented. Like, you know, they're very traditional in a lot of ways. They want to achieve success. They want to reach the top. And on their way to success, sometimes they can see limitations more than opportunities. But I think it's good to see limitations. It's just important to be aware of the fact that you don't want to get stuck in the negatives too much, which could be a danger with being a Capricorn rising. Physically, when you are Cap rising, you probably have really clear bone structure in your face. A lot of times they do have kind of like, you know, very prominent cheekbones. Some of the Cap risings people I'm thinking of are like Lorde and Monica Bellucci and Naomi Campbell. So I think they have very interesting faces. There's usually very like deep and penetrating eyes, and they tend to have good teeth as well, or they at least take like really good care of their teeth. The bones go as far as to say that they also have strong feet. They might enjoy walking, jogging, and as far as personality goes, because rising sign is not just your physical description but also your personality, they tend to come across a little bit quiet and maybe a little bit shy and reserved at first, but they would be observing everyone and they would be very different when you get closer to them and when you get them to open up to you. And that's another thing too with, like, let's say romantic relationships. They can be pretty quiet and like they will be very loyal, most likely, dependent on everything else in your chart, but very kind of loyal, very dedicated and committed, but not as expressive necessarily. Of course, that would change if you have like a fire sun or a water sun. Like there might be a lot more expressiveness dependent on your specific chart. One really great thing I think about being Capricorn rising, so something to be proud of or excited about, is that you guys age really well. Like Cap risings get a lot better as they age, like fine wine. Jane Fonda is a Cap rising and look how well she's looking, or like how long she's able to hold on to her beauty. Monica Bellucci is another example. She's also looking wonderful as she's getting older. So definitely other things to mention, like very hardworking, very dedicated, can usually have maybe like a little bit of resting bitch face, you know, when you first see them, like very kind of stoic and serious. Can you tell I'm a Libra rising and not a Capricorn rising? I'm like smiling too much all the time. So at first, definitely like a little bit colder exterior, I would say. And they enjoy being known for their professionalism, for their skills, but like I said, can sometimes maybe have like a dark sense of humor, can be masters of sarcasm, I would say, and a little bit more focused on like the negatives at times. And like oftentimes something to keep in mind is that, like, you know, Cap risings, they have a lot of fears often. Like when they're young, they are fearful of what their career will be about, like choosing the right career. When they're in the middle of their work life, they might be afraid of getting retired and what the next stage of life will be. And then when they are retired, they might be scared of death. So trying to enjoy life as much as possible, trying to enjoy the results of your labors, because if you are a Cap rising, chances are you're highly successful and you're someone who can achieve a lot in life and like achieve things based on your own work. Like, you are not someone who gets things handed to them, but you climb like the goat. Capricorn is the goat, right? Like you climb the steep mountain, and then once you're there, you're there. It's really hard to kick you off the top. That's, I think, a very clear thing with any Saturn ruled sign, like Aquarius rising as well. That you may go through hardship. It might be harder early in life. You might kind of start off with being this grown-up, this responsible adult right away. But later on, your success is there to stay. Your success is very stable. There's also a lot of concern with public opinion, I would say, because you're so focused on achievement and advancement. You can be quite caring, like you can care quite a lot about what other people think about you. And you would also be very systematic in your approach to your goals. You may be very kind of, like really good at using the system to your advantage, very good at playing by the rules, and not afraid of things taking time, versus someone else in your life or people around you who might kind of want quick results without putting in the work. So let's break it down. Let's talk about Saturn as your ruler through different houses in your chart and what that might mean. So if you have Saturn in the first house or Saturn in Capricorn, that makes you very self-driven and very self-oriented. I mean, we all are to some extent, but when you have the ruler of the chart, Saturn, in the first house, there's even more of that. There's even more focus on being self-made, being a leader, always questioning yourself, always asking questions. There's always a certain level of sobriety, somberness, and quietness with people who have strong Saturn. And like I already mentioned, like early life, childhood might be quite challenging, but then later in life you achieve a lot and you kind of work through things and you dedicate yourself to your goals and you achieve things. You achieve success. So very serious, very patient, very dedicated. Maybe you find yourself mentoring other people quite often, maybe like really early on. There is a chance that you will start your own business eventually because you might not enjoy working for other people. And financially, this applies to you. And also if you have Saturn in the second house, financially, there might be a lot of difficulty early on or a lot of struggle early on. But then this is something that you put the effort in and you come out on top. And you learn to like save money. You learn to have stability in your financial life. If you have Saturn in the second house or Saturn in Aquarius, you become someone who's really focused on roots, on stability. You seek stability in life, and this will come across through like financial stability, but not only. Second house is things we value. So this could be getting education and kind of like, being a stable professional person, or valuing your achievements and like having your diplomas to show them off, for example. You might be someone who's quite like careful with money and doesn't spend it as easily. So this is something to pay attention to as well, because you want to keep balance, right? Like you don't want to just make money and like save everything. But definitely someone who's very financially driven, financially oriented, and maybe you become a source of stability for people in your life as well, as far as like taking care of them. If you have Saturn, if you have Saturn in the third house or Saturn in the sign of Pisces, a lot of your life gets focused on your neighborhood, maybe on your schedule, on your writing and communication skills. You will be someone who will constantly be growing and improving your communication skills. You might be someone who takes responsibility for your siblings. There might be a disconnect and really cold relationship with siblings. Oftentimes, Saturn also limits the chance of having younger siblings. So if you have Saturn in the third house, in the sign of Pisces, this might mean that you have like an older sibling. And you know, there might be like a colder relationship with them or a colder relationship with your relatives that once again might improve quite significantly when you get older. You're also quite conservative. You're very structured and organizing your day-to-day life. You have the ability to have like a clear schedule. Of course, that would be different if you have Neptune together with Saturn, for example, as is the case for a lot of people born in 1988, 1989. But overall, there is definitely a desire to bring structure to the daily life, to bring structure to your commute, to your local transportation, local movement. You might be someone who takes a lot of time before you feel comfortable in the neighborhood. You might be someone who sticks to your routine. Like, you know, you find one coffee shop that you sort of like and you keep going that way. You like going to the park and you take the same street all the time. So you can benefit from shaking it up once in a while. If you have Saturn in the fourth house or Saturn in Aries, this is interesting because sometimes Saturn in the fourth can be tough. It's another sign of being a grown-up really early, having a lot of family responsibility. Of course, once again, as everything in a chart, there could be positive aspects. There could be Jupiter together with Saturn, and that might modify the toughness of your childhood. But it's definitely, overall, there's some kind of need to be responsible. Maybe even after you leave your home and you get married and you find yourself taking care of the children, taking care of the home, and also working full time. And Saturn always asks you to take responsibility for your life, to change things. So here it's all about like finding ways to be responsible, but also finding ways to take care of yourself. Maybe ask for help, right? Because sometimes Saturn can also bring a lot of guilt and feelings of like, it should be different. And so instead of feeling guilty or thinking of things the way they should be, think about what you can do to share the duties, share responsibilities. Sometimes having Saturn here means like really cold relationship with the mother, or maybe even like mother being kind of distant and maybe working a lot, so you don't get to connect with her as much, and kind of growing up without like a lot of material and emotional support, which also in turn makes you more reserved, right? Like a more self-sufficient. So learning to undo some of that. Sadly, as we get older, we realize that a lot of our life as adults is about undoing the effects of our childhood. If you have Saturn in the fifth house or Saturn in Taurus, a lot of your focus in life will be on creativity, on romance, but Saturn delays things. So whenever Saturn is connected to fifth or seventh house through the ruler, like you can have seventh house in Aries, but then your Mars squaring Saturn delays. Saturn says like, not yet, you need to learn the lessons of maturity. So as far as Saturn being in the fifth house, it does say that your romantic life might be delayed. But once again, it's also a planet of stability. So maybe early in life, your relationships don't work out. You will most likely be someone who seeks stable, committed relationships, but maybe they fall apart. But then later, when you are in your 30s, when you're in your mid 30s, marriage will be more successful. And the same goes for children. Like Saturn either limits or delays having kids, so you may only have one child, or you may have a child later in life. I know someone who had a kid like really young, because it's not one rule for all. She had a kid really young, but then it was more because the husband really wanted a child, and then she ended up having a second one in her 40s. So that tends to happen here. Life being oriented towards children. So Naomi Campbell has this placement, and she doesn't have any kids of her own, but she's very involved in charities dedicated to children, including Nelson Mandela Children's Fund. So you get that Saturnian responsibility when it comes to kids. And if you are a creative person, you will be you will need structure to your creativity. You will need to make sure you have a schedule and you write every day for like at least 20 minutes, or you paint every day, or maybe at least once a week. So the more you can organize your creative process, the better the results, versus, you know, for other people who wait for inspiration, here you make your inspiration. If you have Saturn in the 6th house or Saturn in Gemini, so 6th house is the house of daily work and Saturn is responsibility. So naturally you will have more to do and you may find yourself being at the ground of things. You know, maybe you do a lot of work that other people don't want to do, like paperwork, like cleaning, organizing things, knowing where everything is. This is also actually a really great placement for being like a health counselor or a lawyer, because 6th house is the house of health and kind of like things that develop with our health, versus 1st house is more like vitality, the potential health that you get. So Saturn being a responsible, being kind of like a guide, could make a good health counselor or a lawyer, or like a teacher as well, someone who teaches either medicine or law. You may naturally find yourself investing a lot of time into your diet and watching your diet, and make sure you exercise a lot and make sure you take care of your health and your body. And there's a lot of ability to heal other people too. If you have Saturn in the 7th house or Saturn in Cancer, Saturn in the 7th, having the ruler of your 1st house in the 7th, or having the ruler of your ascendant in the 7th, makes you very relationship oriented. And perhaps if there was any coldness growing up, any challenges growing up, you will seek to find a partner who will be a grown-up, an adult in relationship, but also someone like nurturing. You're seeking someone who can take care of you, and someone who can almost be like a mother figure that perhaps wasn't there, that like was lacking. Of course, there can also be an other side of that, where you end up taking a lot of responsibility in a relationship, where you end up being very self-protective. You end up building a lot of walls, a lot of boundaries around yourself, and then make sure you don't, you know, build too many walls and forget to build enough doors, because you want to also be able to let people in. But your identity definitely depends on who you're with, like on your ability to take care of other people and your ability to nurture. So the more you interact with other people, the more you find yourself, the more you find your own voice. And at the same time, Saturn in the house of marriage means that you should probably wait to get married, because oftentimes if you get married really young, you might end up feeling disappointed or the marriage might break. But if you marry a little bit later, the Saturnian longevity kicks in and you're able to stay together with your partner for a really long time. There can also be a great potential for starting a business with your partner. If you have Saturn in Leo or Saturn in the 8th house, this is together with Saturn in the 7th, Saturn together with Saturn in Cancer, Saturn in Leo can be a little bit tricky. Saturn in the 8th creates a lot of kind of inherent responsibility about the dynamics you have with other people. You might find yourself taking financial responsibility for a lot of people. Maybe you're questioning things being fair and unfair a lot. You might be someone who's really careful with putting money aside, you know, for children, for education, careful with savings. You do find yourself kind of like really involved with other people and their finances. So once again, here, making sure you're not overdoing it, right? And you're not feeling like you're taking care of everyone while no one is helping you. You might be really well suited for working with other people's money. Like Saturn is a manager usually, and 8th house is the house of other people's money. So finances, like you can be a financial advisor, you can be an accountant, you can work with taxes, you know, be like a loan officer or anything like that. At the same time, you might be quite intuitive, because whenever you have the ruler of the ascendant in the 8th house, that's the house of mysteries and sudden events, and death and transformation, you kind of see that there's a lot more to life than meets the eye. And as far as, you know, like death goes, usually Saturn in the 8th house promises long life. Like there will be almost, you know, like you will still face sudden events and you will still face upheavals in life, but with Saturn, you will have that like stamina and stability to actually go through them and come out on the other side without necessarily freaking out too much. There could be a little bit sexual frustration with this placement or being a little bit closed off, and this is something to keep in mind too. Learning to open up, learning to let go of the control which Saturn seeks so much, and Capricorn Rising seeks as well, could be very beneficial for you. If you have Saturn in the 9th house or Saturn in Virgo, the focus of your life becomes very much on education, philosophy, dealing with people of other cultures, even possibly moving away. Like this could be, together with Saturn in the 12th, a place of foreign settlement. And this is the placement that Giselle Bundchen has. Bundchen? Forgive me if I'm messing her name. Giselle, married to Tom Brady, at least according to my latest insights. So yes, this is the placement of like, you may end up moving away, you may be very interested in learning, you may find yourself taking role of responsibility and leadership when it comes to organizing traveling. Like maybe you're someone who plans all the trips. Maybe you are quite literally like a religious leader. Maybe you're a pastor. I don't know how many pastors are watching this video, but you know, that's a possibility. The tricky thing here is that Saturn always delays things, right? So there could be delays with education. This is also the house of higher education. It might take you longer to figure out which path to take. Early in life, you may have a lot of conflicts with authority figures, teachers specifically. You may feel like they don't understand you, like they're trying to teach everyone the same way while you're not as attuned to their ways, and it might take you a bit longer to meet people in life who actually inspire you. And it's also important to pay attention to how you view the world, because with this placement, Saturn in the 9th being your views and your philosophies, you may see the world as a place of struggle, as a place of hardship and just the, you know, work, and no breaks. So make sure you're also seeing the beauty in the world. If your Saturn is in the 10th house or in Libra, this is exalted Saturn. This is a very comfortable place for Saturn. You're someone who is very professionally oriented. So every Cap rising is professionally oriented, but here it becomes even more. You're very concerned with your reputation. You're very concerned with status. But at the same time, with Saturn in Libra, you're not someone who is just about following the letter of the law mindlessly. You have that diplomacy, that ability to be socially minded, the ability to see the world as a changing, living, breathing organism. So you're able to kind of be a charming manager. You're able to change the laws. You're able to kind of see what works, what doesn't work from a more flexible point of view, I would say. And this is a great place for like a law-related career, for being a manager at a higher level, you know, like even being a filmmaker, being a producer, someone who organizes things and makes sure things are running smoothly. As always, with Saturn, success might come later in life to you, but it will be there to stay. If you have Saturn in the 11th house or Saturn in Scorpio, you know, a lot of your duties in life become a lot more subtle and kind of maybe about transforming your deep fears and helping other people transform their deep-seated fears. Maybe you even do something like that professionally, like, you know, like being a psychotherapist or something. You are very focused on other people. You're very focused on being a part of community. And you either find yourself being someone who organizes group outings all the time, or you find yourself who doesn't like being in groups, especially early on. Your friendships might be mostly with older people. You kind of can earn from your networks, from your friendships. You may earn from older people as well. Like maybe you work with older people. Maybe you try to do something that's like socially minded, but something that benefits the elderly. And it also tends to make you someone who's very well connected, but once again, might take a little bit longer for you to fully explore that. If you have Saturn in the 12th house or Saturn in Sagittarius, so Saturn is considered in its joy. As much as Saturn can enjoy being in a house, it kind of likes being in the 12th house, because 12th house is the place of self-undoing, self-limiting beliefs, isolation, and Saturn likes being alone and sitting there and kind of sifting through challenges. So make sure you're not too negative. Make sure you're not too stuck in that place where you're just constantly going through hardship. But if anything, Saturn can give you the ability to overcome struggles. It definitely is a place of like being more intuitive, being more connected to higher power, being kind of believing into something more than you. You can find people with this placement being managers in like hospitals or working, being like a lawyer in a foreign country. A lot of success can be found when working alone, when spending time alone, meditating. You may be kind of growing up, you may be like a little bit more shy and really sensitive, but you learn to take care of it, and you learn to mask the sensitivity, or like, you know, find ways to build comfort within, because oftentimes these people, they do move away from home. They don't necessarily stay where they were born, so they need to learn to adapt. They need to learn to be comfortable in different environments and different circumstances. So the only advice here is trust that your Saturn can overpower and overcome any difficulty, and try to take life less seriously. So this is all I've got. Let me know if you have any questions or comments, and I'll talk to you later. Bye guys.